Hi everyone, how are you? Are you still enjoying the holidays? Maybe you're a bit fed up and you're looking forward to going back to school already. I bet you're not missing school rules though, even if you're missing school. We had lots of rules when I was at school. One of them was, and this'll ring a bell with you, sit on your chair properly, because we used to like swinging on two legs on our chairs. And every time the teacher said, sit on your chair properly, we used to go, yeah, whatever. Not to their face, inside our heads we used to think that. Because we thought they were just spoiling our fun. Now maybe if the rule had been, don't swing on your chair because underneath this very thin carpet is a concrete floor. And if you fall off your chair by swinging on it, you'll hit your head on the floor. You'll split your skull open and your brains will leak out. Well, then we might have thought, oh, well, that actually is a good rule then, isn't it? That makes sense. We had another rule. When I moved from infants to juniors, our classroom was upstairs. So when it was playtime and the teacher said we could go out to play, we used to run as fast as we could down the stairs so that we got as much time playing outside as we could. We didn't want to waste any time at all. But we had another rule that was don't run on the stairs. And we always thought, but we want to run on the stairs because we want to get outside as quickly as possible and play. But maybe if the rule had said, don't run on the stairs because they're concrete, and if you fall, you'll break your arm, and then you won't be able to play out at all. Well, then we might have thought, oh, well, that's a good, sensible rule then, isn't it? Well, we had all those rules at school and lots more as well. I can't remember them now, of course. And I used to think when I was at school, I can't wait to leave school because then I won't have any more rules to follow. Well, of course, I was wrong. There are lots of rules in life. There were rules where I worked, for instance. You had to work a certain number of hours. And some people might have thought, that's a bit mean, making me work all those hours. But actually, if you didn't work all those hours, you wouldn't have got paid. So I suppose it was a good rule, wasn't it? There are other rules depending on what your job is. So if you drive, for example, there might be a rule that says you can't have a drink of anything alcoholic. And that's not a silly rule, it's a sensible rule, because if you were to drive and you'd had a drink of alcohol, then you wouldn't be safe on the road and it would be dangerous. So that's a good rule as well. Here is a picture of a rule that I see nearly every day. Every time I take my car out, I see this rule. Do you know what it means? Well, it means that you mustn't go any faster than 20 miles an hour on this road where you see this sign. There are lots of them around, mainly in streets where there are houses. And some people see that sign and they think, that's a silly rule, I'm in a rush. I don't want to just go at 20 miles an hour, I want to go faster. And it's a straight road and I can see a long way in the distance and I can see when there's something coming towards me and I can see that the road's clear. But it's a rule nevertheless. Now maybe if that rule said you mustn't go up more than 20 miles an hour because there are lots of parked cars on this road and there are lots of houses, and in each of these houses there might be children and they might be too small for you to see and they might run out between the parked cars and then there'd be an accident and a child would be hurt, or an animal if a pet ran out, and you might be hurt. And even if you weren't injured, you'd be really upset that you'd had an accident and hurt somebody else. There are also, what it doesn't say as well, is at the top of that road, there's a school, a primary school, and a doctor's surgery. So there'll be lots of children and even older people or people who are not very well. going to the doctors who might not be able to walk very fast. And if you're driving too quickly, they wouldn't be able to get out of the way quickly enough, and you'd have an accident, and everybody would be very upset. So, when you see that sign, you might think, that I don't want to go so slowly, I want to go faster, I'm in a rush. It's actually a really good rule because it's there to keep us safe and other people safe as well. Well, God gave us rules, didn't He? In fact, the first rule was the rule that He gave to Adam and Eve when He'd first made the whole world. And Adam and Eve lived in a lovely garden, the Garden of Eden. And God gave them a rule, didn't He? He said, you can eat anything in this garden except from the fruit of one tree. You mustn't eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, of course, after a little while of doing the right thing, they broke the rule. Eve was tempted by the serpent, who said, you won't die. You won't surely die. God's telling you a fib there. You won't surely die if you eat that fruit, and you should eat it. It's good. Well, Eve was tempted, and then she tempted Adam as well, so they broke the rule. And they might have thought at the time, it's not a good rule to keep because that tree, the fruit on that tree looks delicious. And they probably did enjoy the fruit. But actually that fruit was there, that rule was there for a good reason. Because once they broke it, it made them unhappy. And it made God unhappy as well. And even worse, they had to leave the garden forever. They weren't allowed to live there anymore. And it made them really sad. So it was a good rule to have, but they broke it. Of course, God made other rules, didn't He? He gave us the 10 Commandments. Let me see. I thought I had it in my Bible, but I've looked on the wrong page. Let me try and find it now. Oh, there we are, look. So, there were 10, weren't there? Now, they were split into 2 sections. The first 4 were all about our relationship with God. So they were, have no other gods before me, do not make yourself an image, so an idol. Where are we? Don't don't use God's name as a swear word. And the fourth of those first 4 rules was remember the Sabbath day. So remember Sunday and make it a special day where you don't do any of your normal work, you think about me. Now those rules were just the same as all the rules that we have in life. They're not there to spoil our fun. They were there for a good reason. Now if, for example, we were to worship other gods, that would make us really sad because none of our prayers would be answered. God made that rule because He knows He's the only true God. So we need to just worship Him and pray to Him, because if we don't, if we're praying to some other false God or to an idol, to a statue, our prayers wouldn't be answered, and that would make us really sad, wouldn't it? And unhappy. So those rules are there for a good reason. Now the next 6 rules were all about our relationship with each other. I'm not going to go through them all because I think you know them, don't you? Now, of course, there's one about not murdering, and it stands to reason, doesn't it, that if you murder somebody or kill somebody, that will make their family very unhappy. It will make your family very unhappy, and it would make you very unhappy as well. I read a story recently, a real story about something that actually happened. and a young man had been out one evening with his friends, and he got into an argument with another man, another young man, and they started fighting, and he threw one punch and he hit this young man, and this young man fell down and hit his head, and he died. So the young man that hit him was arrested because he'd killed a man. So not only was he very sad, but the family of the young man that he'd killed was really, really sad. This was a young man who had 70 or 80 years still to live, and he was taken away from his family too soon. So it made them really sad. It made the young man who'd hit the other man's family very sad because their son or brother had to go to prison, and it made him very unhappy because it was just a silly mistake that he'd made, but it had a big consequence. So that rule about not killing is there, not to spoil our enjoyment, but for a good reason, because it makes us so unhappy if it's not followed. What about there's another rule, isn't there, that says don't want things that other people have got that you haven't. And you might think, well, but I want this new phone, or I want a new computer, or I've had my settee for 3 years now and I'm a bit bored of its colour and I want a new one. But the thing about that rule is, that's another rule that's there for a good reason, because if you always want new things, you're just never ever satisfied, and it makes you unhappy, it makes you miserable, because you're always wanting something else, so you're never satisfied with what you've got. So, rules. We might think they're a pain in the neck, but actually they're there not to spoil our enjoyment of life, but to keep us safe and to keep us happy. And it's just exactly the same with the rules that God gave us. They're not there to spoil our enjoyment and to make us just do what God says because He wants us to and for no good reason. He's made those rules because they're really good rules, and because they keep us safe and they keep us happy and they keep all our friends and family happy too. Anyway, I hope you all have a really good week, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.